may find yourself being uprooted suddenly from things.
From it. So every day that I hold on to that gift and I don't release it, someone else is talking. Even in the midst of the challenges,
yes,
you know,
God is there.
God is there.
You may find yourself being uprooted suddenly from things that you are passionate about.
You're sitting in front of, you don't know what I'm fine, just let me be.
Adeola Obagun is a former banker who currently works as a business strategist. She's a keen advocate on disability matters and has spearheaded many campaigns aimed at breaking down barriers affecting persons living with disability. As a naturalist and an environmentalist, she enjoys nature walks and art. She's also the owner of Ablesworth Pottery Club based in Ikoyi, Nigeria. We are excited to have her on today's conversation. So tell me about the work you've been doing. You talked about working with the disabled, the blind people, creating better opportunities for them to live and also to earn. So talk to me about that journey.
Yes, I mean it's been a very interesting journey because the work we do is centered around training and rehabilitating people who have lost their sight in adulthood. It's one thing if you were not born with sight, right? And you know, through life you get to cope, right? It might probably even be easier if someone was born without sight to be able to adapt and cope. But if you have experienced the gift of sight and then you now lose it in adulthood, it can be a very harrowing experience, right? For many people, they experience feelings of loneliness, of stigmatization, of just feeling like, the world is about to end, right? But you know, when they come to places such as the Federal Nigeria Society for the Blind, you know, they're trained and rehabilitated. And by the end of their tenure there, they realize that, look, it's not the end of the world. It's the beginning of a new world, right? You know, even if the sight is gone, the other senses can be trained to become sharper, you know, so, you know, they learn skills like, you know, how to cope, you know, with moving around. They call that mobility and orientation, you know. So blind people, I mean, we have people who they were so afraid of moving around even their houses, right? But by the time they've been trained, they can now travel to Enugu, travel to London, you know, and they're doing fantastic. They can move on their own. So we teach them mobility and orientation. Then apart from that, they also learn daily living skills. They learn how to cope by themselves. You know, if they were in a flat alone or if they're in a house alone, they learn how to cope, you know, by themselves, how to live by themselves, how to wash, cook, clean. So blind people can cook, they can handle daily chores, they can make their beds, iron, they can do all the things that, you know, people with sight can do. And then they also learn things like Braille. So Braille is a system of embossed dots, right? Whereby a blind person can be taught, you know, it's a new language where, you know, A is like that, B is like that, then, you know, so it's, if you learn the language, then you'll be able to read, you know, if something is in Braille, right? And I'm sure you probably have seen Braille products before. If you maybe buy a product, a medicine that was done in, made in the UK, you will see some embossed dots. So those embossed dots are Braille dots, you know, and with that, a blind person will be able to read and see that, okay, this is Panadol. Because blind people cannot see, but if they feel it, then they'll be able to know that it's Panadol or it's you know, whatever drug they are looking for. You know, so at this point, I would also like to encourage the pharmaceutical industries in Nigeria that, you know, it's high time we started to include you know, the products that they're making, that they should have a facility whereby they can braille the product so that blind people are not excluded. If they walk into a pharmacy, they don't have to be asking people, please, what is this, what is this? They will know for themselves, so they shouldn't be excluded, like, and just be kept in the dark, and apart from that, apart from braille, they learn, beautiful craft work. They learn, if they want to go back to school, they can be prepared to go back into school. They can be prepared if they want to go back into university. They can be prepared so that they can, pass their exams and things like that, right? So they learn these beautiful crafts as well. They learn music. They learn crafts like tie and dye, adire. They learn baskets making, cane weaving. They make beautiful, beautiful laundry baskets. They make hampers. In fact, we usually supply hamper baskets to market women in Okeri, every Christmas, right? And, they make very beautiful things. They make slippers, detergents. During the COVID lockdown, they sold a lot of sanitizers. They've been doing very, fantastically well.
Let's talk about inclusion, right? How can we begin to, as individuals, how can we begin to think inclusion for people who have different disability challenges? So even in the church, how can we think inclusion? How can you encourage? I know that there's a law, you've spoken about that law as well. How can we begin to, wire our minds to realize that we have the ability to create better opportunities for people who have disability?
Yes, so inclusion is something that we have to really ingrain into our fabric, right, in Nigeria, because the truth at the moment is a lot of people may not necessarily have come across someone with disabilities, apart from maybe people in wheelchairs and all that. But the larger, society, many people have not come across a blind person, or would not even know how to interact with a deaf person, and there are all sorts of disabilities. There's cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, autism, all sorts, but, what you will find is that many people who have these challenges are usually kept at home. However, these are human beings, right? They have intellect, they have abilities to integrate into society. So they should not be kept at home, right? They should be trained in such a way that they can be part of society, they can be included into society. And I particularly want to thank the federal government, because in January 2019, there was a law that came out called the Discrimination Against People with Disabilities Act, right? It was released in Anti-Discrimination Against People with Disabilities. It was released in January 2019, right? And that law says that people with disabilities should be included as much as possible into the fabric of the nation. So public companies, for instance, in terms of recruitment, as much as possible, if they can, they should recruit about 5% of their workforce from the community of persons with disabilities, so that they are not excluded, right? So that there is representation. Then apart from that, there should not be discrimination in our transports, ways, on the buses, on the trains, and the airplanes. They should be given priority, in fact, because really and truly, if someone has been disadvantaged, then you should look out for them first. Just like how I'm sure you remember watching the film Titanic. They were calling for mothers and children first, before men could get on the ship. So in circumstances like that, if a person with disabilities was applying to a school and made the grades and maybe needed boarding facilities, that person should be considered the person should be considered, first, because this person has an urgent need. It should not be something that will be left like to chance. Like, okay, there's no space. Priority should be given. So with everything in Nigeria, we need to be more conscious about inclusion. Inclusion has to be something that is really part of our thinking. And inclusion starts with awareness. The awareness has to be put out there. People have to be aware that there are people who live with disabilities amongst us. And as much as possible, the things that these people need so that they can live a comfortable life should be made available. For instance, there's sometimes you watch the news, you will see sign interpreters. Because of those sign interpreters, a deaf person can understand what is going on in the news. And there should be more and more sign interpreters, because so many people, you have over 2 million Nigerians that are completely deaf. And they're still part of, there's nothing wrong with them, it's just that they are deaf. If there is sign language, then they can participate, right? For people who are blind, they can hear. So if facilities were there, so that someone can hear what is going on, then they will be included. So if, for instance, a blind person, say, was going to church, for instance, they would have something like a Braille Bible. But to be honest, many of those Braille Bibles are very cumbersome. I mean, Genesis is like this big. The next books are like this big, and who really can be carrying a cumbersome Bible that is from here to the sky? So the more convenient thing is an audio Bible. And we all listen to, on my way here, I was listening to audio Bible. It's convenient. You can drive. You don't have to be physically reading. You can listen to it. So it's more convenient. So we have to always think about what can make this person's life easier because of the challenges that they have. How can we make life easier? If you're going to a public place, let's say a bank, is there a parking space for someone who has disabilities? Has someone else that can walk very easily been parking in their parking space? So things like that, we should make allowance for things like that, so that the people who have obvious challenges or people who have disabilities are not made to feel any less comfortable than the pains that they're going through.
Wow.
So that's what inclusion is all about, trying to ensure that the things that they need are there, trying to ensure that they are not left out. They are part of the everyday decision making that we take. I mean, a blind person, one of my blind friends was telling me how she went to a restaurant, and when the manager of the restaurant saw that she was blind, the woman was trying to carry her leg for her, like, oh, I want to help you walk. And she's like, but I can walk. I'm the one that got here. You don't have to help me walk. That's not how you help me. Just let me know if there's something that I'm going to trip over or fall. But just, you don't, like with my guy cane, I'm totally fine. So we have to learn how to even interact with these people. It doesn't mean that because someone is blind that they can't walk. They can trust me, they can fly if they wanted to. But it's we have to try and understand the different disabilities and learn how to interact with people, so that at the end of the day, we all benefit. Exactly. And a lot of times people would leave out people with disabilities because they think they don't have anything to offer. But it's so not true. If I show you some things done by blind people, if I show you some things done by deaf people, you would be amazed. If I show you, there's a lady I know, her name is Toma. She's I met her when I went to the Modupe Cole Memorial Orphanage in Yaba. And this lady, her hands are not really functional because she has cerebral palsy, but she has most things that you can do with your hands, she can do with her feet, right? And she loves art. She can paint, right? And what she paints with is with her toes, just like how you can hold a brush with your fingers. She can hold a brush with her toes and just be painting away. And that's what makes her, and she creates beautiful works, absolutely beautiful works. Yeah, so I mean, I'll try and bring some next time I come, and you'll be amazed. You'll be amazed. Yeah, so it's not that we want people to pity them and just be like, hey, yeah. It's more of put yourself in their shoes. You know, how would you want the world to be? One of my blind friends, he told me that the doctors told him he has 2 years. After 2 years, he's going to completely lose his sight. So he had 2 years to prepare. Now, the question I'll pose to everyone is, if a doctor had told you, God forbid, but if a doctor had told you that you have 2 years before your sight totally goes, what would you like to put in place? What would you like to put in place so that life can continue? It doesn't mean that because you lose your sight, the world is over. Far from it. But if the right things are put in place, then you can continue living a normal life. And there have been many people who have been successful. I'm sure you've heard of Stevie Wonder, you've heard of Ray Charles, you've heard of Henry Wanyoke. Henry Wanyoke is this blind athlete. He's a Paralympic athlete from Kenya. He's won how many gold medals, and for his country, even with his blindness. So it's there have been so many there's so many examples to mention that it's just we must not cut out people because of their disabilities.
Yeah,
We
I think
them.
let's talk about the church also, right? Because I don't think that our facilities are suitable, or I don't think we make allowances for people who have disability. How can we begin to sensitize? Okay, I think talk about how we can sensitize ourselves, practical steps we can take, as individuals to begin to push for more opportunities and more amenities, infrastructure for people who have disability. And then also, how can we encourage the church with their facility to create opportunities, even think about people who are disabled during the service. It might seem like they don't make a what's the word now? They don't have the numbers, but the fact that we actually think about them, because I've been in a church where someone who was coming in with their wheelchair, the access to get in wasn't really easy. Do you understand? So let's speak to that.
Yes. I mean, due to that law that came out in January 2019, the law gives every public institution 5 years as a transitionary period to make sure that they can put things in place so that if a person with disabilities goes to a church, goes to a bank, goes to any public institution, they can have easy access. So the church would have to look for a way to create ramp access. If they are on more than 3-4 floors, they have to have a lift. Just anything that can be done to ease the burden. Right now, my dad is using a wheelchair, and it's not as if he can't walk, but he has grown very old and his bones are getting a bit weak. And in the place where I live, we live in a block of flats. In the place where I live, there's some stairs to get down to the garden area. And I keep asking them that, please, we need a ramp here. And they say, oh yes, we're working on it. But I'm like, every day that ramp is not there, you are depriving him of access to the facilities he has paid for. And to me, it just seems like such an injustice. that someone is being excluded because he's in a wheelchair, right? I mean, so right now, what we have to do, we have to physically carry him in the wheelchair. The wheelchair is so heavy, but you have to physically carry him in the wheelchair down just about 7 or 8 stairs. But you have to carry him physically. And God forbid, if someone tripped and fell, it could just be so catastrophic. All that can be avoided if you just have a nice ramp access. So as I said, if you put, I mean, I would like anyone to sit in a wheelchair. You don't have to be paralyzed, sit in a wheelchair, but sit in a wheelchair and see how easy it is. You would see that, if you were the one in this wheelchair, you would want a ramp up this place. You would want you would want facilities that would make it easy, so that, I mean, it's not an easy thing wheeling someone up a wheelchair. But like, if you had to be climbing stairs, it's even a bit more is a bit more difficult. So you want to remove those barriers as much as possible. And that is why we are appealing to every church, every institution. We should not, as much as possible, we should include people with disabilities, because they too, they need to hear the word of God. They too, they are asking, looking for miracles. Everybody wants to be healed. Everybody wants to get closer to God. So they should not be deprived of the opportunity of coming to church.
What's your why? I can't think of any better way to craft this question, but why what's the reason why you're so passionate about this? You're so passionate about this, I can tell. What's the reason?
It's the right thing. It's the right thing to do. As I said, I would like you to put yourself in someone else's shoes. Put yourself in the shoes of someone who is disabled. And you don't have to be disabled to do this. But when you get home, you can take a blindfold around your eyes, right? Or if NEPA even takes lights, try and see how many things you can do without your touchlight. You'll be amazed. And for some people, this is their everyday life. They're not seeing anything. For some people, they're not hearing anything, nothing. They are not hearing a sound.
Yeah.
I was talking to this deaf guy, and he was lip reading, so he understood what I was saying. But it's just, if a deaf person cannot lip read, they're not hearing anything you're saying. Like, you can talk, shout, they're not hearing anything. So, of course, thank God he knows how to use WhatsApp, so we could bounce off WhatsApp messages. So, and if you meet like the average deaf person, there's nothing, there's no how you can tell, unless they tell you that they're deaf. But there's no how, they can look like you and me. There's no difference. There's nothing else wrong with them. So it's about just learning how to communicate with them. But the ultimate thing is, as I said, empathy. Putting yourself in the shoes of another person, right? And asking yourself, what would Jesus do? How would Jesus have treated this man? Would Jesus have just not put things in place for this man? Would Jesus have just said, oh yeah, be on your way? Jesus would have treated him with love. Jesus would have healed him. So we should not deprive people of that opportunity of coming, to church because the facilities are not there. That's it.
So let's wrap this up with, what does it mean to love our neighbors?
To love our neighbors, I mean, the whole thing is loving people as you love yourself. I mean, I would not want to put myself in harm's way. So why should I put someone in harm's way? I would not want a situation where, if I couldn't see and I was walking into a puddle, someone did not try and hold me back. Like, no, you're going to fall into something. So I would just want people to treat me how they would want to treat themselves. I would want people to treat me with love. God loves us so much. He loved us so much that he sent his only son to die for us. That is the highest point of love, right? And, if you love someone so much that you don't even mind sharing a bit of yourself, giving yourself, that is like the deepest thing that anyone can do, right? And for people that you don't even know, it's it's really about just displaying those attitudes, those Christ-like attitudes, letting people see humanity in you. Many people, their hearts have grown so cold, but it's just, you hear so many horrible things in the news now, and you're like, how did this even come about? But it's about not going into any of those, but coming back to our first love, who is Christ. Bringing out let people see Christ in us. Let people see Christ in us. Let this, if you see me, I want you to see Jesus Christ. I want to wear Jesus Christ. I want to have the fragrance of Jesus Christ. So you can only do that with love. So love is
What's
very
a practical,
powerful.
as we close out, what are practical ways we can show love to our neighbors?
I mean, the practical ways we can show love is just treating people nicely. I believe in justice. I believe in fairness. I believe in equity. I believe in just, people doing the right thing.
Not breaking traffic lights.
I mean, not breaking traffic lights, just people just being nice, people being generous, people acting like they care.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
We hope we're able to go back to our first love, to actually care for other people,
Yes.
to be nice to people.
And it doesn't cost anything to be nice. It doesn't cost anything to be nice. It's better to be nice than to be a horrible person. Because really and truly, the people who you see that have disabilities now, many of them were not born blind. Many of them were not born deaf. Many of them could have even been born that way, but doesn't make them any less human. No, it doesn't.